Welcome to the DAO Factor. I'm your host, Lisa Yu. I'm a tech investor, entrepreneur, and speaker that got into crypto in 2017. This podcast will cover crypto, DAOs, Web3 communities, and the key leaders behind them. For those who are new to DAOs, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization that's taking the world by storm. Follow the DAO Factor on Twitter and YouTube to watch videos of our podcast and learn more about the new way to form community. Today, I'm super excited to introduce to you our guest, Steve Shpilsky, founder of StayDAO, the first DAO created to help unhoused and underhoused people. StayDAO's mission is to work with existing organizations that address housing issues with the goal of evolving into a Web3 nonprofit. Steve, what are you most passionate about and what motivates you to wake up every day?
Wow. Great question, Lisa. Thank you for having me. A couple of things that really motivate me. I think that the real estate world needs to change, and it's obviously a model that has helped people, but helped a select few, and has caused problems for more and more people. So as time has gone on, a select few people have accumulated wonderful generational wealth related to real estate, while the masses have been the ones suffering in terms of affordability and accessibility to housing and accommodations. What I'm very excited about is breaking that mold, changing that, anywhere from a founder from an underrepresented community that wants to be in an area around other investors and creators that doesn't have affordable access to just staying at a conference at NFT NYC for the week because it's expensive, all the way to really helping the use cases of people that are really either underhoused, sleeping in their cars, and are in and out of places, all the way to people that really have that are completely unhoused, that have even greater issues. So I'm just very excited to have a company and starting StayDAO that allows us to help a lot of people get a bed is really the way to describe it, in a sustainable manner as well, which we'll touch as well.
Tell me more about the sustainability of your housing spaces.
It's so cool. So we started with a company, Stay Open. I mean, that's where this all started, where we create pod hotels for digital nomads and travelers and repurposed buildings. And it's great to have a company where we don't have to try to be sustainable. And as I was thinking about it, we're taking old office and retail buildings and recycling them for a new use. They no longer have the use that they were intended for. They're sitting empty, and now we're bringing new life to these buildings. And when I started to dive into this, I learned that 10% of our embodied carbon footprint every year comes from constructing new buildings. So tearing down old buildings and building new ones. So it's a huge number. The real estate industry actually accounts for 40% of the annual carbon footprint, or the carbon emissions related to real estate, but building new real estate is 10%. So I said, if we can take a building that's already built, that is already accounted for, it's embodied, so it's already a sunk cost. I said, if I could take a building that's empty and convert it into a hotel or a apartment, we're saving 10% right off the bat versus having to build a new bed. So not only is it a lot more cost effective, it's a way to get new beds online in a way more sustainable manner. So we're starting to, and then once we get into operations, we're much more operationally efficient in our operating model than a typical hotel, which is big and inefficient from a energy perspective. So we're really diving in and working with some ESG funds and some other people that can help us further quantify what is the net positive environmental impact that we have with our business model by recycling real estate. I mean, that's really a concept that we're really familiar with other stuff. So that's another fun part about the business that we're really and one of our core values as well.
Yeah, I love that. Not only is it a business, but it also has impact.
Correct. Yes.
And how did you know this was going to work? What gaps did you see in the housing market? And what are you doing to address homelessness?
Yeah. So the first part of the question, before COVID, I started looking around and I said, building hotels takes forever and it's really expensive and it always costs more money. And that's what I used to do. And then I started to see empty buildings and I started to see articles saying that people don't have a place to stay and it's like expensive. And I'm like, wait, empty space and people need space. And then I asked myself, I've lived all over the world. I said, I don't like using this word. I'll use it to describe it. But I said, why don't hostels exist in the US? But they exist everywhere else. They're in
Interesting.
Europe.
Yeah, it's
They're in
so
South
popular
America.
in Europe and all
And there's
like
no
Asia,
stigma.
South America. Right.
Yeah. So I said they exist everywhere, but I'm like, but they're kind of crappy, generally speaking. They're inconsistent. There's no Marriott of hostels. There's a couple of people coming up with really cool concepts now. And I said, what if we take the good aspects of that model, which is it's affordable, they're in good locations, there tends to be really good community. You always meet people, you go on adventures, it's very collaborative, people help, they cook with each other. But then what if we keep the positives, but we make it really nice, like our space in Venice Beach, which Lisa, you've been to, and like don't make it feel cheap, actually make it feel like kind of like a nice boutique hotel, like the common areas and the co-working areas. And then for the sleeping part is instead of sleeping in kind of crappy bunk beds like you do in a traditional hostel, let's make like pods that actually give you privacy and give you your own light and your own ventilation and your own charging capabilities. So while you may be sharing a room with someone, when your pod is closed, you may not even know who else is in that room. So we said, let's take the pain points and try to eliminate them. And then let's embellish on all the positives. So like, in a typical hostel, it's like usually a small dingy lobby and there's like a lot of people crammed in. But what if you made it more like a co-working facility meets a boutique hotel, wide open, people working, collaborating. So it feels a lot more premium than like what you're paying for. And that's what our customers in Venice Beach tell us. They're always like, Steve, I feel like I'm getting away with something. I'm paying $100 a night for a pod and I'm on the beach. I have this awesome space. Like
I literally have a view of the beach from the living room because, I've hosted an event there and all the attendees were like, wow, like what an incredible space. And location is key. It seems like you've selected prime locations.
And in a lot of empty office buildings, they're in prime locations and they're sitting empty. I mean, it frustrates me. There's 3 buildings down from us in Venice Beach. There's a green building when there's a Starbucks in there, and it's a building that's 30,000 square feet. It's been empty for 5 years. Oh, it's like there's been a building that's empty for 5 years, right on the water. You could literally throw mattresses on the floor and like put it on Craigslist, and people would rent them out.
Underutilization of space,
and that happens everywhere. And real estate is so inefficient. That's what frustrates me. It takes so much money to build. It leaves such a negative impact on our environment. It takes so much time. Yet it's the most inefficient thing in our, like most space isn't utilized. You have people that are looking for space and you guys do some awesome events, like people looking for space. And then the people that have space, and most of the time the people that have space, it's like empty.
You don't connect
most of the time. So we want to at least like take this empty office space, and the biggest need is a bed. That's how we know. We didn't know 100% if Stay Open was going to work. That's why we opened up Venice Beach doing 10 pods, seeing how much people will pay, will they get along, testing out our tech, incorporating Web3 aspects and product into our model. And now we're confident to open up 80 beds in Santa Monica on 3rd Street Promenade. And that one's going to be 10,000 square feet. And seeing what we did in Venice Beach gave us the confidence. We knew, but in Venice Beach we started at charging $50 a night. Now we're at close to $120 a night. And before people knew who we are, people were we were half empty the first month or two. Now we're like 90% booked every month. The other part of your question was, I grew up in LA, so I've seen like homelessness and unhoused people in LA unfortunately my entire life. And I always just ask, and I have kids, and it's really sad when like your kids like through the lens of someone that's just very naive, and they look out the window and like, why does that person not have a home, right?
Yeah,
And things
a
about
home
having
or a
children as they
bed or
ask.
yeah, on the street. Yeah.
It's like a very, very authentic question. And when it comes from like the purity of the eyes of a child, and we become callous as
Yeah.
adults, but then when you start hearing children ask like the whys of the world, you're like, man, like we need to have a better answer. So
Totally.
that, and then when we moved into Venice Beach, it was like the middle of COVID. And for those people that are in LA that went to Venice, like, in 2020, 21, it was like Mad Max. It was bad. I mean, it was like a different world along the boardwalk with encampments and people. And like there's stuff that we saw that was just not good, like buildings burning down, people getting hurt, substances.
Oh,
And here we are figuring out a way to help people that need help to find a bed, like paying customers. But we've always said from day one, if we're going to do this to help come up with affordable product for customers, we think our customers are also going to care about what's around them. So they're going to want to help people that are worse off, that are unhoused or underhoused. And it's something that we should do day one. And I always thought that whatever we're doing to help repurpose spaces, our pod design, our layouts, the way we do our bathrooms, the way we operate, the tech that we're building, I always wanted to be able to sit down with cities and say, this is how we repurpose to stay open for commercial purposes. Surely you as a city, you may have buildings that may not be in a prime location on the beach in Venice, but maybe, you're 2 miles in and you have empty city-owned or county-owned properties that used to be offices, which now you don't need anymore either. What if we help? We'll open book. We'll show. We've already paid the architects, the designers. We built out the tech and the
you have the
pods.
staff, you have
Let's
the
work
tech.
together.
Let's
Let's
collaborate.
let's show you how we can do this more efficiently. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was we said we should also just give back day one. So right away, even before we created the DAO, we said we started our bed for bed program where we allocated a portion of all revenue to give to a local nonprofit in Venice Beach. So we work with a group called the People Concern. So we've been giving them money every month and volunteering as staff to help the organization. And I'll pause here, but then that kind of led us to, as we got into like the Web3 chapter of our business and started Statepass NFT, our membership program that allows people to accumulate tokens in the form of rewards that they could trade or use for stays or gift or sell. We said that 20% of those NFT proceed sales are going to go to basically seed fund the start of StayDAO. And that's how StayDAO is going to kind of get capitalized and get incorporated and get going and potentially hire people to work at StayDAO. And as you pointed out, the mission of StayDAO is to help unhoused and underhoused people utilizing Web3 ethos, tools, technologies, know-how to see if a group of interesting people could come up with true solutions in the housing space for people that are unhoused or underhoused.
It really sounds like you're accelerating the ability and access to housing and through technology, through identifying underutilized spaces and partnering with the real estate groups and property managers and real estate developers. And you're like, hey, let's collaborate and do this better. How do we move the entire industry forward? So I'm curious, what is your background in real estate and hospitality?
Before starting Stay Open, I spent about 10 years financing and developing, we call them old boring hotels. I mean, they weren't that boring. Some of them were pretty nice properties, but they're kind of your traditional Hyatts. And a couple examples, we didn't develop, but my company, my fund financed a large part of the Waldorf Astoria in Beverly Hills. So the complete other end of the spectrum. It's for those, again, in LA, it's beautiful, amazing rooftop, a wonderful ownership group. Very expensive to build hotels like that. Very, from a management perspective, a lot of moving pieces, but a beautiful property. But very intimately involved with seeing that project being built, understanding the economics of that project. My company developed, and this was actually kind of what planted the seed for Stay Open. Myself and a group of individuals bought an old office building by LAX. It was a 250,000 square foot office building built in the 1960s. and we converted it into a 400-room Hyatt hotel.
Wow.
And that conversion process was a lot of learning points. It took longer than expected. It cost more money than expected. And as we were doing it, as we were like turning in a big building into a hotel, I'm thinking to myself, you know, you're going to have these hotel rooms, and there's going to be some people that are going to sleep here for like 6 to 8 hours. And I'm like, I wonder if a lot of these people may not want the whole room. They just probably want a bed, like to be able to like come and like, do they want to pay $200? What if I had a $60 bed and like the bed, and then just like the common areas that they could do what they want to do, but like, do they really want to pay? So I'm like, okay,
right.
what
If
if
one person's
to
crashing for one night, do they really need the entire hotel room?
Yeah. And then like operationally, like the second someone walks into a hotel room, your cleaning crew, they've got to clean everything, especially now. Like you never know what, like, but you've got to turn the sheets, not great for, you've got to like wipe everything down. You've got to, you know, the person may never even shower. You've got to wash the shower. Like all these things, like it adds up in terms of just operational inefficiencies versus like the model that we have with like nice high-end shared bathrooms like in Equinox that are easier to clean because you clean those throughout the day, but you're still easier than like turning a room. That helped me. And like, I'm not sure if I mentioned here on my other call, like I'm a former forensic accountant and a CPA. So I've always loved like the language of numbers and understanding like chain of custody of finance, which is kind of what's opened up my passion to blockchain, because blockchain is just a way more efficient ledger system, like old school, like it was journal entries, like that's how we would track money in and out or like the financial condition. And then when I started to really dive into blockchain and the underlying technology, I'm like, wow, this is a really just an evolution of, you know, the language of finance and accounting, which has been around for thousands of years. Now we're actually utilizing a wonderful form of technology to actually, in a more, just a better way to track custody. And hopefully we're getting, so it's more environmentally efficient as well. Like we'll obviously get there. Real estate wise, just very intimately involved, working with brands, hotel management companies, seeing like how it's still like most businesses, like I don't know if most people know this, but like when you go stay like at a Marriott hotel, Marriott doesn't own that hotel. That hotel is usually owned by a large institutional company, a fund, a high net worth individual that owns the real estate. Right. And then they hire Marriott as the brand, like the franchise, kind of like McDonald's. Like they hire Marriott to kind of do the brand standards, to market it. Marriott gives you their reservation system. And a lot of times even Marriott doesn't manage the property. There's another company that the owner hires, like a property manager. So the owner is usually paying Marriott a fee to franchise to call it a Marriott, and then the owner has to reinvest in the property based on what Marriott tells them. And then they're hiring a management company to run the thing, and then the owner is just kind of collecting after paying the fees. Yes. But like the way that the fee structure is set up, it's pretty complex. So we really wanted to simplify that as well. Like we wanted to make it way easier for like the owner of an office building to just hire us and pay us our one all-in-one brand franchise management fee. And we do our thing and we turn their property into a stay open at a reasonable conversion cost and show them that we're going to make them a lot more money than they would have ever made if they tried to lease it out to like your traditional law firm tenant, who, by the way, no longer exists because they're not leasing spaces at the same rate anymore. So
exactly. What if housing was decentralized? What if the real estate was co-owned by the people living in the spaces? You know, you mentioned as a CPA accountant how efficient the blockchain is by able to track data and information and numbers on a ledger. And, you know, when there's that full transparency that's immutable and unchangeable, it just makes it easy for everyone in the chain to see what's going on. You know, the ownership structure can be shared. I'm curious, what are some of the values and core tenets of StayDAO? And do you see yourself evolving into that model of decentralized ownership?
I believe so. One of our core values of Stay Open, the overall brand is being open. Obviously, it's in the name. Yeah. So being open means being open to new ideas, being open to change, being open to shaking up the status quo. And our roadmap definitely includes a concept of, can we have individuals share a piece in the ownership of the underlying real estate? And the first step is just getting people on chain with the reward system and used to using tokens, and showing people what our economics are, being transparent about how these properties function. At the end of the day, you have to make sure that they make money, at least enough to cover the expenses. I definitely see that happening. We work with a couple other DAOs that are in the kind of more property ownership space, that are already coming up with platforms that are set up day one to basically be crowd-funded but on-chain property ownership. And these are quasi DAOs because it's more like people are limited partners in a partnership where the owners don't and I'm happy to talk about this, they may not have a lot of governance rights on the actual property, but there's a lot of transparency because a lot of the financial data and operational data of the property are kept on chain. So there's some really cool DAOs. I think Balcony DAO is one that we've had a few really cool Twitter spaces with, and they're doing some great things on property ownership. They're probably from I'm sure there's many others, but they're the ones from what I've seen that are really pushing the envelope in a good way. We'll see with us and stay open. There is a roadmap where people may, in the form of DAOs, not necessarily StayDAO, but other real estate DAOs that are specifically set up to buy a building that's empty and turn it in, and then hire Stay Open to manage it. Because I think even though there's a form of decentralization, at the end of the day, and we've learned this because we've started to test this out, people still want to, no one wants to decide on when to buy toilet paper or how often the thing needs to be cleaned, or deal with
there's some central operational pieces that
dealing with contract,
the right person to own and manage.
Exactly. So I think with real estate, there's a lot of moving pieces. So I think having a management company that is hired by a group of owners, which is really not that different than how things work right now. It's just that ownership, that management company needs to be trusted. It needs to embrace Web3 ethos. So I think that's part of our evolution is we will have decentralized ownership of why wouldn't, and we want to embrace these digital nomads. We actually want people to come to us and say, there's this awesome building in Denver, and I know that there's 100 people that would love to have 100 pods in Denver, and we want to buy it. We're not going to run it. We don't know how to get the pods, the tech, all this stuff, but the building's there. We think we've got the community. We'll Stay Open, manage this for us, and we will work with and coordinate with them how to do that. And then again, being Web3 forward, we're about to roll out our just this simple stuff, the ability to use various forms of cryptocurrency to pay for your booking. Hotels don't have that yet, and we're going to have that in a few weeks. Just that simple stuff like that, where people can again start testing paying with crypto in a way that people are just more familiar with, where it's as easy as paying with your credit card. And then when we roll out our NFT, you could, as you accumulate your rewards points, you can pay with your Stay tokens. It'll just make it really easy. So it's a very cool, seamless interface, but it's a fun thing. And then there's securities rules to obviously be cognizant of. You can't just sell ownership interests to people in the climate that we're in under the current regulations. So either those regulations need to change, which they may, because some of that stuff isn't fair and actually creates an exclusionary system versus an open system. But I think people have to be careful, dealing with securities laws, and no one wants to get in trouble. We want to push the envelope, but we also want to be careful to not violate securities laws, which could get expensive and a lot of liability to people.
Yeah, we're still in the very early stages. With the rise of DAOs, there are now about 5,000 DAOs and over 1 million DAO members and governance token holders. That's actually not that many. And we're still just scratching the surface and seeing kind of where the market will take, crypto and DAOs and NFTs, as a DAO or an organization, forming a DAO, How are you looking to become one of the top DAO leaders in the world?
Yeah, well, I think what we picked a very specific focus. So I think having our first DAO to just be a nonprofit to help under and unhoused people, I think is important. A lot of DAOs may not have that focus. It's a little more like they're kind of there's a lot of DAOs there's a lot of DAOs that have DAO in the name. And I think what a DAO is to be determined what it really means. Like we're kind of still in this like ambiguous phase, but a lot of DAOs are really DAOs for marketing purposes versus like, you ask most people like what they think a DAO is, like this decentralized autonomous organization. There's a lot of awesome businesses, but they're not really DAOs. They're just like clubs with like the members that have limited rights to like give suggestions, really, not even a vote, not even govern, but like suggest things, which is fine. I think as long as things are transparent and people know what they're getting into, I mean, whatever, like there's a lot of cool, as long as there's more adoption, because I think we're still, as you said, Lisa, we're still so early, like we're still like these fringe people, like we're around each other so much. So it may feel normal, but like you step out of like the LAs and Brooklyns and Miamis of the world, and it's like, what are you guys doing? What is this?
Very early adoption phase right now.
Yeah. So having that core focus, I think I'm really curious to test this pure altruistic component, because then we get to be very pure. There's no profit motivation. There's no ego. There's no, what am I going to get out of it? It's like, let's see who we can help. And let's see if we can utilize Web3 tools and governance and ethos to help people.
Yes.
A guy that I met, he's like, there's an unhoused person. She's a DJ and she lives on the streets, but she DJs. And he came to me. He's like, can we like get her gigs? I'm like, dude, like that's the type of stuff that should be on StayDAO. Like that should be on StayDAO. Like it's someone that's living on the streets, but just trying to hustle, doing their thing. Like they can DJ. Like I'm sure like we know a lot of people that could always use a DJ for some parties, and what a great story. Like who wouldn't want to like embrace people like that to allow them like to have a little more economic freedom and create these ecosystems utilizing Web3, and like, someone like having discussions on Discord about that. And that's the type of stuff that I think could be really exciting. And our theme for the week at Stay Open was do good, feel good. Actually, like this week, it was like everything, like our Twitter spaces, like everything, like all our internal discussions were like, what can we do to give back? Like, how can we help? I've always said like the problem of unhoused and underhoused people is so big that on one, in one regard, it's, I mean, it's terrible that it's that big. But it's also hard. Like you can't say I'm just going to solve the problem, because like there's 50 versions of the problem. So to me, it's like, let's pick the ones that are important to us and we could actually make an impact, because there's so much. So it's like,
how can you make it specifically?
Yeah. And then like utilizing like our DAO, hopefully like and then you multiply that by 100, by 1,000, by 10,000, and everyone's got who are they specifically helping, whether it's organizations or one-on-one. Like that's how I think we can really get this change going and actually have things happen, as opposed to just talking about them. And then utilizing DAO governance, where people have a voice of like who to help. Again, no egos, people just wanting to purely help, whether they're giving housing to people, giving money, giving people gigs, I've even thought StayDAO can help, again, founders from underserved communities that need housing for a week in like Venice, but they can't pay for it, but they need to come in because they're pitching VCs, or maybe they have no VCs, but they want to go to some of our events because that's how they're going to meet potential investors, but they can't even like stay in a place because it's just, you can't afford it.
They're bootstrapping their business.
Yeah. Like just give people a chance to get in that room, right? Like how do we give people a chance to be in the room? And the digital room is awesome and cool, but nothing beats like being in the real room. Like that's like the bridge, but like at the end of the day, like
access to a community and to a network that they otherwise wouldn't have access to.
Exactly.
Well, tell us more about, how StayDAO is structured and the governance and how that all works.
we played around with a couple different ways of how to structure StayDAO and our NFT, and we ended up separating them. So what we ended up doing is we created Statepass NFT, which is a membership rewards program on chain. So anyone could go on. We're going to go. Our allow list is about to open up next month, and we're going to have a mint in September. And basically, it's a way for a nominal fee to purchase a membership that unlocks the ability for you as a frequent guest of Stay Open to accumulate reward tokens that you can trade in for stays. So for every 10 paid stays, you get a free stay, basically is kind of one of the main rewards. So, but what you can do with those stay tokens, we actually want people, you can gift them to someone else. You can sell them, you can give them to your co-founder, you can donate them to StayDAO, right? That could then someone could use to kind of StayDAO can then decide which other people that should get those tokens that they could redeem for stays. So that's kind of the Statepass NFT model. And as we grow, there's going to be a lot more utility to it. Obviously, events, you get a discount off of when you pay for bookings, you get a discount for traditional booking. And it's all going to be integrated with our dApp and wallet. So really easy, just connect your wallet when you log in, or it'll automatically be connected. And when you go to check out, it'll ask if you want to pay with your credit card, pay with cryptocurrency, or it'll say, oh, you've got enough stay tokens to redeem a free stay, and people could just select it, make it really easy. But then what we said was 20% of all the proceeds from our NFT sales are going to go to StayDAO, because we wanted it to be impactful. We wanted there to be enough money to actually formally incorporate as a nonprofit DAO, which we're researching and working with legal counsel how to like appropriately set that up. And again, to me, like they really made sense of like the concept of a DAO and a nonprofit, like that seemed to like make sense to set that up and work through how to set that structure up. So it's 20% of those proceeds are going there. And then there's going to be an amount of money in the treasury to start, allow the community to vote. So just through your snapshot, people voting as a Statepass NFT member, you will get a governance token in StayDAO. So you will be able to participate in the governance of, and we hope that anyone who is a Statepass member cares. Like they don't really have to do anything else. They've already donated, right? So it's like the money part, we've automatically said 20% of what you're paying is going to StayDAO. So we hope that enough people are going to care to actually go into Discord, go into our communities and actually say, you know what, hey, I found this awesome person on the beach who's a DJ and I want to, StayDAO should hire them, or someone, let's get them gigs, or I want to
up the chain.
Exactly. Or I know this great nonprofit and I think we need to give them $5,000 because they're going to open up X, Y, and Z, or they're going to help these 3 people. Or what I think will ideally happen is initially I think StayDAO is going to work with existing organizations that are doing really good work in the local communities of where Stay Open properties are, or where the members are. And then what I envision is eventually StayDAO raises its own money from other sources, from other means, like any nonprofit, but utilizing the Web3 community, right, to bring in money. And I think that to me is really exciting, to kind of utilize Web3 for charitable efforts, which people have done, but put it in a DAO specifically to address unhoused and underhoused people, which I don't know if people have specifically done. I'm sure people are starting, but it just seems so natural. It's what we were doing with our Bed for Bed program, what we're doing in Web3, what we're doing in housing, that this should just be a very important core value. And humanitarianism is one of our core values. So this falls right in line with like doing good, feeling good, give back. And we know we've had people that have, you could read it on some of our reviews. Like there's people that have said like, I love what you're doing. And like, when I saw you give back to unhoused people, it's like, I was sold. Like I booked right away. You want to make it easy for people.
Being a StayDAO is not just a bed. It comes with, that Bed for Bed mission. And it's beyond just real estate.
Correct. It just, because I was saying, it's like, some companies like have to figure out a way to find like where their altruism is, or how do they give back, or what their sustainability element is. Like I just say, for us, it's just sometimes super easy because like we didn't even have to overthink it. It's just naturally it's such a natural fit for us, like the sustainability component, the giving back component. It's like I don't have to, it's like we're not forced. It's just so natural. And that's again going back to like this shift in real estate. Like again, real estate is so important to our lives. Obviously it's important in our built environment. It's important to sustainability. You need a roof over your head. It's like one of the basic needs. We need shelter, we need food, we need community, right? Or like probably the three most basic needs. And that's what Stay Open and StayDAO does, shelter, right? Like, the food part where that's sometimes us, sometimes someone else, but then the community part, because it's not just the bed, it's also who else is there. And we've had so many just
in your environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Because just because something is affordable, it should not feel or be cheap. And again, that's the word that I don't use. Like whenever people are like, oh, this is like a cheap place to stay. I'm like, no, because that's like not, we don't want people thinking that even if it's affordable, it's not cheap. Just because something's affordable does not mean it's cheap. Cheap has a different meaning to us. Right. And we don't want that.
Yeah,
exactly. So
maybe you can say, I'm getting so much value from my space, not it's cheap.
Yes. No, it's really fun building a company, and we've got a great team, and the Santa Monica location is really exciting because we get to do what we're doing in Venice Beach, but almost 10 times bigger. Yeah, it'll be really fun. And the city of Santa Monica is super cooperative. They passed an ordinance allowing people to change offices to hotels and apartments. Very easily. So that's a cool thing. And we're seeing progressive cities like saying, wait a second, like we need to help people do this. Like we don't want to get in the way. We need to help people.
Yeah.
We're seeing some good change happen, and it's a good, exciting time.
That's amazing. Well, you talked about community, and I think clearly you're building a community here. You're also, giving back to the local community that you're in. What do you think is the heart of building community, and kind of what are some of the sentiments and challenges that your members have faced with housing? I kind of want to hear how the community have come together, and also how do you plan to, continue to grow that?
So a couple ways. I think the right combination of utilizing like digital tools, like engagement there, but you need people coming together in real life. Like we've all been at concerts, right? Like we're like in a small venue listening to music. Like, oh my God, this is like the best band, the best DJ, best performance ever. And it's like that energy of the people. And it's like, and then you listen to the same song later, you're like, that's like not that good of a song, but like the collective energy of that community, like there's energy that we have as people that when we're around each other is very different than when we're just communicating.
There's an energetic exchange in real life.
Yeah. So I think to build true community, and this is where like us in the Web3 space, like this is the evolution. How do you take these awesome, like we're kind of, like Web3 did evolve like a little bit out of like people were forced to build community during COVID. Like, so they got really hyper like online community building, and then like would come together at different times. But I think what COVID taught us is like nothing replaces the real thing. Like not like everyone's obviously out at conferences and events, and like there's stuff going on that we're going to be at later today. And people love the real life. So to build real community, you have to have these real life touch points and having true mission and purpose. So like, and it could be a couple different things, because some people love like being just completely altruistic. Some people like, they need to make sure they're taking care of themselves as well. It's okay to be a little selfish, because we as humans need to be taken care of so we can take care of others. Because if we're not in a good space mentally, financially, emotionally, like how are we going to help others? So it's like, it's okay that like we as entrepreneurs and founders and working in cool things, like need to make sure that we're taken care of. One of those ways is a bed. Yeah, because then that's how we're going to help others. Like, again, it's human nature. When people are in good places, it's so much easier to help, because like you don't have to worry about like your day-to-day struggles or whatever. So when you're around a strong community that could help you take care of yourself, I think that helps. That helps as well. And for us, we're doing a lot of engagement, a lot of listening. So we had some people that were experts in the homelessness space today on a Twitter. And we did most of the listening. There's an individual that used to be homeless and then got off the streets and bought a house, and we were just listening, like what the story was. Like, what am I going to have
on
to
the
add
edge
to
of our
that?
seats.
Yeah, so it's like a lot of listening from a community perspective, hearing what people want, what their pain points are. Something, we can't solve everything, so I think also being honest, like, there's certain, like, you can't stay in Venice for $25 a night, like it just will never work. So some things, like having transparent conversation, like we're not going to help every single underhoused person either, like that's not, we're not, the problem is not going to go away, but so being honest and transparent, and I think all those things collectively help form community. Having a safe space to be open is really important, and it's important to do it in real life, because I think, like, behind the veil of certain platforms, it's a lot easier to say, do things, but then at the end, like the lowest, like we still are people that need each other. And especially there's more digital nomad now. People like aren't working in offices as much. So like, but we yearn connection with people. So, when we are going to places and traveling and staying in places, like we yearn it even more. Like, where can you pop in where, like, there's going to be, 80 other, they don't even have to be like-minded. They don't have to think like you. They just all have to be open. They may think completely differently, right? But as long as they're open-minded, right? Like, you may learn something. We've had that happen. We've had people that are like complete Web3 noobs stay at our property. And we've had people, like, we had a night where there was an engineer from OpenSea stay with us, and he minted 5 NFTs with us, because he's like, I didn't even know you guys had like an NFT membership platform. This is awesome. I'm a digital nomad. Like, obviously, like, I think what you're doing is awesome. And then, like, later that night, he's sitting in the room behind me around like 8 other people, explaining like what Web3 is to like German tourists and like people, and like
converting people in the living room.
Like one by one, right? Like, kind of. And I think that's really, because people have asked us like, oh, you should just be an NFT only hotel. And I'm like, no, I actually want to go the other way. I want it, like, we're going to have that component, but I want more people in this world, not less people.
You're going to be inclusive and create a bridge between Web 2 and Web 3.
Correct. Yeah. It was kind of a long way, but all that, I think, is important. Like, it's an important thread in building community, and not to exclude anyone from the community, like actually be as inclusive as possible.
I love that. How do you plan to empower the next generation, especially with increase of rental rates, housing, and inflation? I'm curious, like, have you been seeing like sentiments and feedback from people? I think I've definitely seen many stories of people complaining about rental rates across major cities, but across the board, just all across the US.
Yeah. Well, I think about, our staff has issues, like, it's hard to find. We have people that just graduated from college and are looking for places to live right now. And it's hard and it's expensive. I think about, I have a teenage son. I think about like the world that he's going to grow up in and move to and kind of evolve into. And I want to make sure that he's not just stuck in his phone and in virtual communities. And, that there's a generation of people that want to be around people, which fortunately they all still do, which is awesome. I think, like, it's always a concern. Like, are we going to raise, like, whatever the next generation, are they just going to be stuck in their devices, phones, and screens 24/7? Like, the metaverse is awesome, but again, human interaction, like, you cannot replace that. Like, we need it. Like, that stuff is good to be the bridge to, I think, that opens up. But I think there needs to be smarter solutions with housing and accommodations, but that aren't cheap, so people don't feel like they're forced. Like, in fact, we want people to feel like this is a better solution a lot of times than like, so like, if you can get people to like emotionally buy into a brand and a concept like that, and then making sure it's affordable, I think that's where people are really going to be like, yeah, why wouldn't I be a Stay Open member for 1 or 2 or 3 years as I'm a digital nomad, or as I'm trying to figure out where I want to live, or maybe I don't want to live anywhere for like 3 years until I have to. I just want to bounce around from place to place, and I just need to make sure that there's an affordable, flexible, socially engaging place to stay. And there's going to be some really cool open people, and no matter where I go, I know there's going to be, like, again, open people. Like, I'm going to meet interesting people doing cool things. Everyone has a dream, and other people. I want to be around other dreamers. That's a big concept, is like opening the world to your dreams. And what we want to do is build spaces that people could come and dream with others, and like give them the opportunity not just to dream, but potentially to start realizing those dreams based on the places and the people that they're around.
Yes. I feel like our culture is definitely shifting from like isolation to people wanting to live in community. They want to live in a village or amongst people. And that really is the heart of Web3, that collective consciousness, decentralized ownership and value creation, where everyone has a vote, everyone has a voice. We can build together, we can dream together. And I feel like definitely StayDAO embodies that ethos.
For sure. And that's why it was like, while we're like started as a real life company, it was so easy to start when we dove into like the ethos of Web3. It was so natural for us to see like, wait a second, we're like the mirror real life version of what Web3 communities are building. So we need to be the real life answer to a lot of like, again, Web3 communities. Like, what is our community? Okay, we've got a great online community, but where do we get together? How do we stay? Like, where do we stay? What do we do? Like, what does that really mean? We all like talking about things of what we like to talk about, but then like we need to come together and actually be around each other. Like, so
Definitely.
and that's Stay Open. We want that to be, whether you need a place to work. Obviously, the bed's a big part because everyone needs a bed, in the places where there's other people that are open-minded. So
it sounds really fun. Well, I'm curious, what were some of your favorite spaces growing up? And what is StayDAO, Stay Open doing now to create a better living environment?
my favorite spaces growing up, I come from a family of like immigrants. So I grew up in apartments my whole life. So I grew up kind of in a more communal setting.
Yeah.
My parents came from a communist culture.
Which culture?
So like from a communist culture. So like there was a lot of, only as like an adult, did I live in an actual like house on my own, but like I've always loved cities. Like I think I've always like loved just cities and how they function, and they've fascinated me. So I like that extreme of spaces now, more so like I'm trying to find more kind of places out there, like connecting with nature, which is also challenging because like when you go to some of these awesome places, they're not accessible to a lot of people either. So every like mountain resort town, most people can't find a place to stay. Like you go to Jackson Hole or to Tahoe or to Mammoth or like you name it, Aspen, like that's like normal people can't, like, how do you go to a place like that?
Yeah,
right.
Just travel alone is hard to get to, and then the housing prices.
And then the housing, yeah. So there's some cool concepts popping up in terms of just like accommodations in spaces like that. And we're looking at converting or building some spaces in these types of resort towns for travelers and for workforce housing as well, because the other problem in these areas is like, where do the people that like work in the service sector live, because they're priced out of everything.
That's right.
So we've looked at ways of, again, like how can we use our business model being efficient with real estate and space into helping workforce housing for that, like restaurant bartender or that school teacher that needs to doesn't want to drive an hour into like town from outside of Jackson Hole where there's a lot of traffic. And
they'll do a better job if they can have a bed and rest and show up, be close to work. Like it all makes logical sense.
Yeah, and you really see it in people, like in like these communities. Like there's some animosity towards tourists because tourists are generally well off and they could, price isn't an issue for them. And you have like this like weird energy of like people are like, great, I drove an hour away, it's expensive, like I have like a ton of roommates, and like here's these people here enjoying their time, and like that's great, that's like helping keep us employed, but it's also my quality of life sucks because I have to drive from very far away. So it's created this weird energy in these resort towns, and like there's like locals versus tourists, and it's like that shouldn't be that way. Like why does it have to be that way?
It's like the locals, like that's their community, that's their home. So how do we serve people that's living in the actual communities?
Yeah,
where both parties can live harmoniously, right?
Exactly. But like that environment's not exactly a space, but like being in like nature in that environment as humans is also, like, I mean, I love being by the beach, being in the mountains. I think like being in the desert. Like, I think those environments and the space is built in those environments. Again, it does come down to these weird energies, like the vibe you get at the beach, or when you're in the mountains, or when you're in the desert. Like, we all go to those places, and it's just, it's real. Like, it really, I can't put my finger on it, but it's real. So I think the more people that could experience that, the better. Like, people should experience those feelings of being in these different locations in our world, and do it with other people.
And do it in community.
Exactly.
What are the long-term goals of StayDAO, and how can people join? How can they follow you?
So too, we want Stay Open to be the largest
Stay
network
open.
of.
You want Stay Open to stay open forever.
Yeah, and we want to be everywhere. I mean, we really want it to be where no matter what city you land in, wherever you go, it's like as easy to book a Stay Open as it is to get like an Uber. Like, you don't even have to think about like, is there going to be a pod to stay? You land in Miami or Brooklyn or Austin. It's like, oh, like there's always, because we have a lot of inventory. It's like, okay, well, is there something close to me? So that's the goal, is to create this really big network where you just know what you're going to get. You don't have to worry about like, oh, is this hotel or this Airbnb good? Is like, where are the people going to be? Like,
to read through all the reviews and research.
Just like
one thing,
like,
consistency and reliability.
I know what I'm going to get. It's affordable, it's flexible, it's consistent. Like, I know what I'm going to get. So that's like, and then the more people we have on that, the more locations, the more people we have, the more good we can do, and the more money we could allocate towards our bed for bread and StayDAO initiatives. So hopefully by growing Stay Open, we can continue to grow StayDAO, because we'll start putting in our bed for bed program, which is going to a third party nonprofit right now. When StayDAO is open, we'll move portions of our bed for bed program to consistently go into StayDAO. So there'll always be a source of some money coming into StayDAO. And again, we hope StayDAO takes a life of its own, like a true DAO should, where like the community comes together and they raise money, they bring in other donors, they bring in other corporates that want to help, they bring in, and then StayDAO can almost become completely independent of Stay Open. Like, we're just like the Kickstarter for the DAO that's specifically focused for unhoused people, but it could take a life of its own. We just want to steer it and keep the guardrails on that. It's helping unhoused and underhoused people. That's the mission. Like, as long as you're within that framework, like, to me, I'll be happy to see it evolve into anything. And hopefully it could evolve into something pretty substantial to start making change in people's lives and in our built environments.
Yes, I love that. Well, what's your advice to people who are just getting into Web3, deciding if they should start or join a DAO?
First of all, talking to a lot of people, and then having an understanding of like what a DAO is and what does it mean to them. Because I think like the definition, like, people understand what the words mean, but they don't understand like what like the combination, like what the sum of the parts means. Because like I said, like, there's a lot of
decentralized, autonomous, and organization. It's all three together. It's the sum. Yeah. The sum is greater than the individual parts.
Yeah. So I think like it's important to say like, what do you want to be in a, there's for-profit companies that are DAOs, and do you want to like, is this like, do you want to like work in a DAO and like provide services or kind of be an employee within the DAO? Do you just have altruistic ambitions and you want a DAO that just does something good? That's more like what we're doing. Do you want to invest? Do you want to own? Do you want to try to use a DAO as kind of like an ownership structure, which is some of these like real estate platforms that are popping up? And I think like kind of because it still comes down to like the similar things before there were DAOs. Like the questions are kind of still the same. Like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to work at a nonprofit? Do you want to work in a startup? Do you want to work at, what industry do you want to be in? I think like ask yourself like what do you want to do as an individual? What are your interests? What are your passions? And then start seeing like, okay, what are the DAO organizations that are doing things in those various areas? And then clicking into like, okay, what do they really do? Is it a DAO, but it's really just like an LLC, and like it's called a DAO, and there's like limited governance and input, and which may be fine. There's not absolutely no judgment, because that's fine too. Or is it like truly like a decentralized, like City DAO is a good example of like a 100% kind of decentralized real estate DAO. They bought land in Wyoming, and they're going to, I think, build a city, and it's all completely governed through a DAO.
Oh, wow.
And there's some awesome success. There's been some really cool wins there. And I think there's some also challenges of like, okay, when you get a bunch of people together, it's like, okay, like, what do we build? Where do we build it? Like, how much should it cost? Like, so
right.
like,
There's
also,
like the financial decisions that need to be made. Yep.
Yeah. And then like design decisions and like efficiency and like, some things like everything also can't be a democracy. There's just some things that like every little step, again, like a silly example, but like you can't like decide on like everyone's not going to vote on like what kind of toilet paper to buy every time you need to buy toilet paper, right? Like no one wants to.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, maybe once a year you get together and say like, we want to buy things that are sustainable and things that like, this is the budget. Like you kind of like come together.
Things that uplift the community. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like, there's so much out there. There's a lot of noise. I think this last like little seismic downturn may actually help because it kind of like quieted things down a lot.
It turned down the noise. It quieted the projects, and the meaningful projects can now rise to the top.
Exactly. So I think like we're just normal now. We'll kind of see like things that are really gonna come to the surface. So it should be fun. It'll be fun to see the product. And there's always like you and I, every day, like I hear something new. I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. I wonder if it'll work, but it sounds cool. Like, and then some things are actually happening.
And we're at the forefront. We're like, okay, well, let's be the leaders, the thought leaders to try this, because that's how we explore. That's how we grow. That's how we challenge ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, last question for you before we wrap. What is a personal motto that you live by, or a quote that inspires you?
Tough one. I'll use the one that we've been using a quote for the week for Stay Open. It's do good, feel good.
Yes.
Like when you do good for others, like if we think of like, when do we feel our best? It's usually when we've helped someone, right? Like that's when we feel. So I've been saying that mantra all week. And I think it's something that I'll keep saying it, not just this week, because it's like, what can we do to help someone? And sometimes it could be so little, right? Like it doesn't have to be like starting a nonprofit DAO for underhoused people. It's just, what are those little things we could do every day in our life? Like just do something good, it'll make you feel good. And you don't know what that could do to someone else's day. I mean, just like the little things in life really matter. And again, we live in a community, like in a world, and just understanding there's someone may be having a bad day, but like maybe the one little thing that you do for them, that smile, that nice gesture may like completely shift their mind. And as little as that, all the way to like, obviously, like if we could really, really do good, help people in need, if we can start like really making impactful change for people that are really, really struggling with whatever their struggle may be, that's something we should just remind ourselves every day, because we live fast-paced lives. Things are changing. We get stressed, and like taking a breath, like what can we do what can we do that's good today that's going to help, and that's going to make us feel good. Because like that's my long way of.
What a great motto. I mean, it's those micro actions. If you could do one small thing to completely make someone's day or change the course of their life, like how rewarding is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
love it. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for sharing your personal journey all about StayDAO. For those of you who are new to DAOs or new to StayDAO, follow Stay Open. You want to give the URL? Wait.
Yeah. So our company website is stayopen.com. That's our booking site. That's where you can see like Stay Open, the brand. We have StayDAO.io for information on the DAO, and we have all our Discord information on there. And then on Twitter, Statepass NFT is our Twitter handle, where we generally most of our dialogue is around Web3 stuff. So that's Statepass NFT on Twitter. And the last one is Stay Open Hotels on Instagram. So we've got a lot of fun stuff on Instagram.
A lot of web presence.
Yeah, pretty big community on Instagram for only 10 pods, but it goes to show how many people love what we're doing and want more. Stay Open's open. So
they're behind the mission.
A lot of fun places. Yeah.
And do you want to announce what's coming next in Santa Monica?
Yeah, so we're really excited. We're working diligently on an 80 pod location on Third Street Promenade in about 10,000 square feet. The city's made it easy for people to change office and retail space into hotels and apartments. So we're taking advantage. We're one of the first, if not the first group to do that.
That's
It's in a
incredible.
market that's expensive and inaccessible to a lot of people. And we want to make it very accessible and kind of create a bigger version of what we did in Venice Beach in Santa Monica. It's only about, a mile away from where we are. So a lot of synergies there. But yeah, we're working with the landlord and the design and the city trying to, no one's really done this yet. So it's like,
Yeah.
we're figuring it all out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck, and we'll be following your journey. And I can't wait to check out the new space.
Yeah. Lisa, thank you so much for having me on, and always a pleasure to
Thank you.
chat, and can't wait to
Such a
see you
good
in real
conversation.
life in our space and
Yes.
or at various events. We always bump into each other, but thank you so much. This was lovely and really
Yeah,
nice.
that was super fun. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for joining us this week on season 1 of The DAO Factor. Follow The DAO Factor on Twitter and YouTube to watch videos of our podcast, where we'll be dropping a new video every week featuring key leaders of DAOs, community builders, and leaders in Web3.